There's a special kind of dread that only comes around during the holidays. For most people, maybe it's the stress of cooking or traveling. For me, for the better part of a decade, it was a single email. I knew it would land in my inbox sometime in late October. It never had a subject line, just my sister's name. And inside, there was never a hello or how are you. There was only a link. A link to a ridiculously expensive, meticulously curated Christmas list for her 3 kids, my nieces and nephew, who I hadn't really talked to in almost 5 years. For years, I was the family ATM, the reliable older brother who could be counted on to fund a big chunk of their Christmas morning, no questions asked. I was the silent partner in a family dynamic I had zero say in, and my only role was to pay up. But not this year. This year, the madness had to end. After years of being treated like a walking wallet, I finally told my estranged sister I wasn't buying her kids Christmas gifts. My family exploded, but my bank account and my sanity have never been better. So how did I get here? You have to understand the history. My sister, Sarah, and I haven't been close since our early 20s. There was no big, dramatic blowout. It was more like a slow, painful drift, fueled by different life choices, and if I'm being honest, her view of relationships as being completely transactional. She's the kind of person who only calls when she needs something. For a long, long time, I was the one she called for favors, for a loan, for a sympathetic ear to complain about her latest drama. I'm 2 years older, and I think I fell into that classic older sibling trap of feeling responsible for her, even as a full-grown adult. The estrangement really set in about 5 years ago after a nasty argument where she accused me of being judgmental. In reality, I had just gently pointed out that maybe buying a brand new SUV wasn't a great idea when she was complaining about not being able to pay her rent. The details are fuzzy now, but the result was a wall of silence between us. We stopped talking. We stopped texting. We only saw each other at mandatory family holidays, where we'd trade tight-lipped, awkward hellos before heading to opposite corners of the room. But here's the weirdest part. The Christmas lists never stopped. The first year after our big fight, the email arrived right on schedule. I remember staring at it, just confused. We weren't speaking, but here was a demand for hundreds of dollars worth of presents. I thought maybe this is her way of extending an olive branch. A really weird, entitled olive branch, but still. So I did what I always did. I clicked the link. I bought a few of the more reasonable items, a $100 Lego set, a $50 doll, some video games. I mailed them to her house, and I got nothing back. Not a thank you, not a text, not a peep. That should have been my first clue, but I'm a creature of habit and honestly a bit of a people pleaser, a trait my family has always been happy to use against me. So the next year the email came and I did it again. And the year after that, it became this bizarre, silent ritual. The ghost of a relationship kept alive only by my credit card. The lists got more and more audacious. Last year was the real turning point. The list for my nephew, who was turning 12, included a gaming laptop that cost over $1,000. My oldest niece wanted a designer handbag that was almost $500. I work a decent job in it. I'm comfortable, but I'm not made of money. I have my own mortgage, my own student loans, my own goals. I was trying to save for a new car because my 2012 sedan was on its last legs. Yet every December, a huge chunk of my savings, often close to $1,000 when all was said and done, was shipped off to kids I barely knew. Kids whose mom wouldn't even give me the time of day. The part that really got me was the total lack of gratitude. Not once in 5 years did I get a thank you note. Not a single photo of the kids with their gifts. The only feedback I ever got was secondhand, through my mother. She'd call a week after Christmas and say, "Oh, Sarah said the kids loved their presents. She did mention you didn't get Leo the laptop he really wanted, but I told her you probably had your reasons. It was always delivered with this casual disappointment, as if I'd failed my annual duty. It wasn't about giving, it was a checklist, and I was failing to check all the boxes. My parents were the main enablers of this whole charade. Their family motto has always been keep the peace at all costs. Anytime I hinted at my frustration, my mom would shut it down. Oh, just do it for the kids. Don't make waves. It's just once a year. They saw my caving in as the glue holding the family together. But it wasn't glue, it was duct tape, and it was starting to peel. The peace they wanted was entirely one-sided. It was my peace, my money, being sacrificed for their idea of family harmony. And I was starting to realize that the price of admission to this family was to be a silent, compliant wallet. The cost was just getting way too high. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, earlier than usual. I saw her name in my inbox and my stomach immediately clenched. For a split second, a foolish, optimistic part of my brain wondered if this time would be different. Maybe it would be a real email. A "Hey, how have you been?" I clicked it open. No greeting, no text, just a single link. But this time it wasn't an Amazon wish list. It was a link to a shared Google Doc. My blood ran cold. This felt different, more organized, more demanding. I clicked the link and a spreadsheet loaded on my screen. It was titled, Christmas 2025, The Kids' Needs. I almost laughed out loud. Needs asterisk. The spreadsheet had 3 tabs, one for each child. Each tab was a list with columns for item, link, price, and a final, horrifying column titled Assigned To. Most of the assigned to boxes were empty, waiting for family members to be voluntold, I guess. But a few were already filled in. Grandma and Grandpa were assigned a new bike. An aunt was assigned some art supplies. And then I saw my name. Next to the top item on Leo's list, a brand new PlayStation 6, listed at an estimated price of $600, was my name, typed right in, like it was a done deal. But it didn't stop there. On Maya's list, my name was next to a pair of Apple AirPods Max for $549. And on Chloe's list, my name was next to an American Girl doll with a dozen accessories that totaled over $300. I did the math in my head, my hands actually starting to shake with anger. She had asterisk assigned me nearly $1,500 worth of gifts. She hadn't spoken to me in a year, and she had the nerve to send me an invoice for more than my monthly mortgage payment. It was the sheer, shameless entitlement that finally broke me. This wasn't a suggestion anymore. It was an order. This wasn't about her kids. This was her using them as pawns to get money out of me. The assigned to column felt like a slap in the face. It told me exactly what she thought of me, not as her brother but as a resource, a line item in her holiday budget. I leaned back in my chair, the spreadsheet glowing on my monitor, and I felt something just snap. The years of resentment, of feeling used, of biting my tongue to keep the peace. It all boiled down to a single, crystal-clear thought. I am done. This wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about respect, or the total lack of it. It was about drawing a line and saying my self-respect is not a Christmas commodity. The cycle had to end right now. I wasn't just going to ignore it. I wasn't going to buy a cheaper gift and hope for the best. That was the old me. The new me was going to send a message. A clear, non-negotiable message. The ATM was officially closed for business. I spent the rest of the day trying to write the perfect email. I must have written and deleted 20 different drafts. The first few were just dripping with anger, listing every single past slight, every unthanked gift. But then I realized that trying to justify my decision would just open the door for an argument. I didn't have to justify my boundaries to someone who benefits from me having none. The key was to be clear, direct, and firm. So I took a deep breath and wrote the final version. It was short, polite, and absolute. "Hi, Sarah," it began, already a huge departure from our usual silence. "I received your spreadsheet. This year, I've decided to change how I approach the holidays and will not be buying gifts for the kids. My budget and energy are being focused elsewhere. This isn't up for discussion, but I wanted to let you know directly so you can plan accordingly. I wish you and your family a good holiday season." I read it one last time. It was perfect, polite, clear, no room to argue. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute, my heart pounding. This was it. The point of no return. I clicked send. The silence that followed was deafening. For about 2 hours, nothing. A tiny part of me hoped she might actually take it with some maturity. Maybe she'd just read it, be annoyed, and move on. That hope was completely obliterated when my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Are you kidding me?" Before I could even process it, another came through. "After everything I do to keep this family connected, this is what I get. You're punishing my children because you have a problem with me." And another. "Leo is going to be heartbroken. He was counting on that PlayStation. What am I supposed to tell him? That his own uncle is too cheap and selfish to get him a Christmas present?" The texts just kept coming, a rapid-fire attack of guilt and accusation. She called me selfish, heartless. She said I was ruining Christmas. It was a masterclass in manipulation, with every message designed to make me feel like the worst person alive. I started to type a response, then deleted it. I knew that engaging would be a massive mistake. Arguing with her is like wrestling a pig in the mud. You both get dirty, and the pig is the only one who enjoys it. So I didn't respond at all. My email said it was non-negotiable, and I meant it. My silence, of course, just poured gasoline on the fire. An hour later, my phone rang. My mother. I knew this was coming. Sarah had called in the cavalry. "I just got off the phone with your sister," she started, her voice tight with disappointment. "She is absolutely beside herself. What on earth were you thinking?" I took a breath. "Mom, I sent Sarah an email. I explained my decision. I'm not buying them gifts this year." "But why?" she pleaded. "It's Christmas, it's for the children. You know how tight money is for her. She relies on you." "And that's the problem, Mom," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "It's become an expectation, not a gift. I'm treated like a bank, not a brother. I'm done." "You are being so selfish," she said, her voice rising. "You're going to tear this family apart over a few stupid presents. You're ruining their Christmas." There it was, the classic line. The ultimate guilt trip that had worked on me for years, but not this time. "Mom, I hear that you're upset," I said, my voice steady. "But my decision is final. I am not responsible for Sarah's finances or her children's Christmas lists. My boundary stands." "Boundary," she scoffed, like the word itself was offensive. "This is family. We don't have boundaries with family. We help each other." "This isn't help, Mom. It's entitlement. And I'm not going to discuss this further. If you keep yelling at me about this, I'm going to end the call." She went quiet, clearly stunned. Then she just sighed. "I just don't understand you. Your sister is devastated. You've really hurt her." And she hung up. The rest of the week was a blur of passive-aggressive warfare. My other sister texted, "Heard about the drama. Hope you reconsider, for the kids' sake." An aunt left a voicemail saying she was so disappointed to hear I was boycotting Christmas. The family group chat was blowing up with what I can only assume was a digital tar and feathering campaign against me. It was isolating and incredibly stressful. There were moments when I almost caved. The weight of my entire family's disapproval was massive. But every time I felt myself start to crack, I'd pull up that Google spreadsheet. I'd look at my name, pre-assigned to all that stuff, and the anger would turn back into a steel rod in my spine. This was a fight for my own sanity, and I wasn't going to lose. The situation finally came to a head at my parents' annual pre-Christmas dinner. For the past few years, this dinner had been an exercise in tension for me and Sarah. I honestly thought about not going. The idea of walking in there as public enemy number one was sickening. But I knew I had to. Hiding would feel like admitting I did something wrong, and I hadn't. I just set a boundary. So I put on a sweater, took a deep breath, and drove over, bracing for impact. The second I walked in, the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. My dad gave me a stiff nod. My mom gave me a look of pure, weaponized disappointment. Sarah was in the kitchen and wouldn't even look at me. Other family members were whispering and casting looks in my direction. It felt like I had just walked into my own wake. We somehow made it through appetizers with strained, surface-level small talk, but I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, a cold, hard stare. It was only a matter of time. It happened during dinner. My dad was trying to tell a story when my mother cleared her throat loudly. "Well," she said, looking right at me, "I suppose we should address the elephant in the room, since some of us have decided they're too good for family traditions anymore." The table went silent, every head turned to me. I put my fork down, this was it. Before I could say a word, Sarah spoke up, her voice trembling with manufactured anger. "I just don't understand how you can be so cruel, Mark. How you can just single out my children and punish them." I looked her right in the eye. "Sarah, this has nothing to do with your children," I said calmly. "This is about you and me, and the fact that you haven't treated me like a brother in 5 years. You've treated me like a bank." "That is not true," she shot back. "I send you their list so you know what they want. It's helpful." "Helpful?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sarah, you sent me a spreadsheet with my name assigned to $1,500 worth of stuff. You didn't ask, you demanded. You sent me an invoice. That's not a gift list, it's an order form." A few people at the table shifted uncomfortably. "So what if I did?" Sarah said, her cheeks bright red. "You can afford it, you don't have kids. What else are you spending why?" "Our money on." And that was it. That was the line. The final, outrageous piece of entitlement that snapped the last thread of my patience. "What I spend my money on," I said, my voice low and sharp, "is none of your damn business. It is not my job to fund your lifestyle or your kids' Christmas. A gift is given freely. It is not demanded or expected. For years I have sent gifts and got nothing. Not a thank you, not a call, just complaints passed through mom that I didn't buy the *right* expensive thing." I looked around the table at my parents, my aunts, my uncles, and all of you have enabled this. You've all watched it happen and told me to just keep the peace. But that peace came at my expense, and I am no longer willing to pay for it. I stood up. "My decision is final. This is not a debate. This conversation is over." I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat, and left without looking back. As I closed the front door, I could hear the shouting start inside. But for the first time in a very long time, I didn't care. The drama was in there and I was out here. Driving home, the silence in my car was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. The weight that had been on my chest for a decade was just gone. The first few days after the dinner were eerily quiet. No angry texts, no pleading calls. It was the calm after the storm, and I loved it. I fully expected to spend Christmas alone, and honestly, I was fine with that. A quiet day at home sounded so much better than the tense holiday gatherings of the past. About a week before Christmas, I got a text from my dad. "Call me." I braced for another lecture, but his tone was different. He sounded tired. "Your mother is still upset," he said, "but—" I looked at that spreadsheet. "Sarah sent it to us too. You were right. It was out of line completely." I was stunned. "I'm not saying you handled it perfectly," he continued, "but it needed to be handled. We let it go on for way too long. We were wrong to put all that pressure on you." It wasn't exactly a full apology, but it was more than I ever expected. It was an acknowledgement, and it meant the world to me. Christmas Day was peaceful. I woke up late, made myself a nice breakfast, and watched old movies. There was no last-minute anxiety, no dreading the inevitable follow-up call from Mom about what I'd failed to buy. It was just calm. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was a picture from my cousin, the neutral one. It showed him and his kids opening the board game I'd sent them. The text said, "Thanks, Mark. Merry Christmas." It was such a simple thing, but it almost brought a tear to my eye. A reminder of what giving is supposed to feel like. I heard later through the family grapevine that Sarah scrambled to buy her kids presents herself. Apparently, she had to put a lot of it on her credit card and complained bitterly to anyone who would listen. Some family members still see me as the villain, but others, like my dad, started to see things differently. The dynamic had been exposed. The biggest change, though, was in me. That freedom was intoxicating. In the months that followed, I took the money I would have spent on those gifts and finally put a down payment on a new, reliable car. It felt like I was literally driving away from the old, broken dynamic. I started investing more and building my own future, not funding my sister's Christmas list. My relationship with my family is still a work in progress. It's not perfect. Sarah and I still don't speak. My mother is still a little cold, but the foundation has shifted. The unspoken rule that my money was communal property has been shattered. I've proven that my boundaries are not suggestions, they are firm lines. Setting that boundary was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It caused a lot of drama, but it also gave me back my sanity, my financial freedom, and my self-respect. I learned that keeping the peace is often just a code for enabling bad behavior, and that real peace comes from having the guts to stand up for yourself. And that, I've realized, is the best gift I could have ever given myself. So that's my story. It was a long, messy road, but I have zero regrets. The peace I have now was worth every second of that temporary chaos. But it makes me wonder about all the different family dynamics out there, especially around the holidays. So I have to ask you, what would you have done? Am I the bad guy for putting my foot down? Or was this long overdue? I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think in the comments below. Every family is different, and I'm sure many of you have your own stories of holiday drama. If there's one lesson I've learned from all this, it's that you are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to set boundaries even with family, especially with family. It doesn't make you selfish, it makes you self-respecting. For years, I thought I was doing the right thing by just giving in, but I W. As just enabling a toxic cycle that was draining my bank account and my spirit. Breaking that cycle was terrifying, but on the other side of that fear was freedom. The freedom to use my money for my goals, the freedom from resentment, and the freedom to define my relationships on my own terms. It's a process, and it's not always easy, but taking that first step is everything. Thanks for listening to my story. If you could relate to this, consider liking and subscribing for more. I'll see you in the next one. Imagine you spend weeks, maybe even months, prepping for the perfect family Christmas. You clean, you decorate, you plan the menu, buy the presents. You do it all because you love your family. But then they arrive, and they treat your home, your sanctuary, like a dumpster fire at a 3-day music festival. We're talking cookie-stained carpets, food ground into the floor, and pizza shoved under the furniture. A complete disaster. Now, what if you decided you're not doing it again this year, and they had the nerve to call you selfish for ruining Christmas? That's the exact mess we're getting into today, and folks, we need to talk about it. Because this isn't just about one messy holiday. It's about respect, boundaries, and what happens when you finally put your foot down. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling a story that I know will hit home for anyone who's ever been the designated host for family gatherings. The title says it all. Am I the a-hole for canceling Christmas after they wrecked my home? Just reading that gives me secondhand rage. It's a question that screams with frustration, with being taken for granted and hitting a breaking point. We've all been there in some way, feeling like our generosity is being treated like an obligation. So let's get into what happened to this poor woman, because the level of disrespect is truly something else. The original poster, who we'll call Sarah, sets the scene. For the last 10 years, ever since she and her husband bought a house big enough, she's been the one to host Christmas. Her house is the family hub. We're talking her parents, her husband's parents, 3 siblings with their partners, and a grand total of 8 nieces and nephews from toddlers to teens. That's a full house, over 20 people descending on her home for 2 days. And for years, she loved it. She loved the chaos, the laughter, and the joy of having everyone together. She saw it as her gift to the family. But then came last year. Last Christmas, she says, was the end of the line. It was the straw that didn't just break the camel's back, it pulverized it. It started with the teenagers. Her 2 teen nephews, bored and hopped up on sugar with zero supervision from their parents, decided to have a wrestling match in the living room. This wasn't a playful tussle. This was a full-on WWE smackdown. An end table went over, sending a lamp she'd inherited from her grandmother crashing to the floor, shattering it. When she rushed in, horrified, her brother, the father of the delinquents, just laughed. He clapped one of them on the back and said, "All right, boys, take it easy. Your aunt's getting her tinsel in a tangle." No apology. No offer to pay for the priceless heirloom they just destroyed. Nothing. But that was just the opening act. The main event was the mess. A level of filth you'd expect from a horde of locusts, not family. Sarah describes it in painful detail. Her new, light beige carpet, steam cleaned just 2 days before, became a Jackson Pollock of holiday destruction. There were muddy footprints everywhere from people who couldn't be bothered to take their shoes off. Christmas cookie crumbles were ground so deep into the fibers they looked like a permanent design choice. Someone had spilled a glass of red wine on the dining room rug and tried to hide it by just flipping the corner over, as if she wouldn't notice a giant, folded-over lump in her own rug. The kitchen was, in her words, a war zone. Dishes were piled so high in the sink they looked like a game of Jenga. The countertops were sticky with spilled soda and smeared with frosting. But the angriest discovery came on Boxing Day during the cleanup. As she moved furniture to vacuum, she found the source of a weird smell she'd been noticing. Underneath an armchair, shoved way in the back, were 3 slices of pepperoni pizza, crust side up, now fused to the hardwood floor in a greasy, cheesy slick. 3 entire slices. Who does that? Who finishes pizza and decides the best place for it is under a chair? It's not just messy, it's sabotage. It's a choice that says, "I have zero respect for you or this house." She goes on to list finding candy wrappers stuffed between sofa cushions, half-eaten gingerbread men in the hallway, and a child's dirty diaper. A dirty diaper, left on the guest bathroom floor. The disrespect was staggering. She and her husband spent the entire next day on a deep, forensic-level clean. They had to rent a carpet cleaner again to even try to get the stains out, and she spent 2 hours on her hands and knees scraping fossilized pizza off her floor. By the end of it, she wasn't filled with a warm holiday glow. She was filled with a cold, simmering rage. Okay, let's just pause. Pizza. Under the chair. I'm stuck on that. That's not an accident, that's not a spill. That is a conscious decision. That's someone saying, I am too lazy to walk 10 feet to a trash can, so I will treat this pee. Urson's home like my personal garbage can. And hiding the wine spill, the sheer audacity. It's the cover-up that's almost worse than the crime. It means they knew they did something wrong, and their solution wasn't to own up to it and help, but to hide the evidence like a criminal. And the father's reaction to his son's breaking a family heirloom. Getting your tinsel in a tangle. I would have gotten my tinsel in a knot around his neck. That one comment tells you everything about the family's mindset. They don't see Sarah as a generous host. They see her as a free hotel and restaurant with a built-in maid service. The entitlement is off the charts. They act like guests whose very presence is a gift, so they don't have to take responsibility for anything they do. This is a classic case of host burnout, and it happens when generosity is met with entitlement. For years, Sarah happily gave her time, energy, and money to create these holidays. But the family didn't see it as a gift. They saw it as a service they were owed. The dirty diaper is the symbolic cherry on top of this garbage sundae. It is the ultimate sign of disrespect. It says, "Your home is a toilet to me." Honestly, after reading just this first part, I'm not just on Sarah's side. I'm ready to go to war for her. I'm just glad she finally reached her limit, because what comes next is the glorious, righteous stand we've all been waiting for. So after the great pizzapocalypse, Sarah made a decision. A quiet, firm decision she held onto for months. She told her husband, never again. The joy was gone, replaced by anxiety and resentment. She couldn't stand the thought of watching her home get systematically trashed by the people who are supposed to love her. Her husband, who was right there with her scrubbing and fuming, agreed instantly. He was done, too. So this year, in early October, Sarah sent a group email to the whole family. She kept it polite, simple, and non-negotiable. It said something like, "Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. We're letting you know well in advance that we will not be hosting Christmas at our house this year. We've decided to have a quiet holiday at home, just the two of us. We wanted to give you all plenty of time to make other plans. Wishing you all the best for the holidays." She thought that was it. She figured giving them almost 3 months' notice was more than fair. She assumed another family member would step up to host, or maybe they'd all do their own smaller celebrations. She was wrong. So wrong. The fallout was, in her words, nuclear. Within an hour, her phone started blowing up. First, her mother called her in tears, accusing her of being incredibly selfish and canceling Christmas. Her mom wailed, "But it's tradition. The family looks forward to it. The kids will be devastated. How can you do this to us?" Sarah calmly tried to explain her reasons, mentioning the stress and the cleanup. Her mother's response, "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just a little mess." That's what happens when you have a family. Then the siblings piled on. Her brother, father of the wrestling champs, texted her, "Seriously, you're going to be like that over a stupid lamp, unbelievable." Her sister-in-law posted a passive-aggressive meme on Facebook about people who have forgotten the meaning of family. The accusations flew. They called her selfish, a Grinch. Her father called and tried to reason with her, saying, "Look, we'll all pitch in for a cleaning service if that's what it takes." But Sarah knew that wasn't the point. It wasn't just about the mess. It was about the complete lack of respect. A cleaning service wouldn't unbreak her grandmother's lamp or unshove pizza from under her armchair. The guilt-tripping was relentless. Her nieces and nephews were apparently being told that Aunt Sarah doesn't want to see you for Christmas this year, using the kids as emotional weapons. The pressure was immense, with everyone acting like she had single-handedly stolen Christmas, and not one single person offered to host it themselves. When Sarah suggested it in the family group chat, "John, your house is big enough, why don't you host?" the excuses were immediate. "Oh, we don't have enough seating. Our kitchen is too small, it's just too much work." The irony was completely lost on them. It was too much work for them to do it once, but it was selfish of Sarah to not want to do it for the 11th year in a row after her home was treated like a landfill. We have to talk about this reaction because it is so telling. The family's response is a masterclass in manipulation. Notice how no one even admits her feelings are valid. Her mother dismisses the destruction as just a little mess. Her brother boils it all down to a stupid lamp, totally ignoring the sentimental value and the disrespect. They're trying to make her feel like she's the one overreacting. It's classic gaslighting. And the word they all grab onto is selfish. This is the go-to weapon for people who are angry about a new boundary. When you've been benefiting from someone's generosity for years, the moment they draw a line, it feels like a personal attack. They aren't mad that Sarah is being selfish. They are mad that she is no longer being selfless to her own detriment. They're mad the free ride is over. Her generosity was the foundation of their lazy tradition, and she just pulled the plug. The fact that nobody else will host is the most illuminating detail. They admit out loud that it's too much work. They know exactly how much effort it takes, and yet they feel perfectly fine demanding that she do it and then shaming her when she says no. This isn't about family or tradition. This is about convenience. Sarah was their convenient solution, and now they're furious that she's putting her own well-being first. So, is she the a-hole for canceling Christmas? Absolutely, unequivocally not. She isn't canceling Christmas. She's canceling her job as the unpaid, unappreciated event coordinator, caterer, and cleaning crew for a bunch of entitled relatives. Christmas can still happen. It just has to happen without her doing all the work. And the fact that this is such a crisis proves the tradition was never about being together. It was about being together at Sarah's house, on Sarah's dime, and by Sarah's effort. She's not ruining Christmas. She's just refusing to be its martyr any longer. And you know what? Good for her. This is the kind of story that gets me fired up. If you're enjoying this and you love digging into these wild stories, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. We unpack drama like this all the time, and you don't want to miss the next one. All right, let's get back to it, because this family drama is far from over. You'd think after the initial explosion, things might cool down. You'd think the family might accept her decision and start planning something themselves. But no, this family decided to double down. When the guilt-tripping and name-calling didn't work, they moved on to strategic incompetence and outright emotional blackmail. About a month before Christmas, Sarah's mother called again. This time her tone was different, sad and resigned. She sighed heavily and said, "Well, Sarah, since you won't host, it looks like there just won't be a Christmas this year. Dad and I are too old to manage it, and none of your siblings are willing. I guess we'll all just sit in our own homes, all alone. It's such a shame the family is falling apart." This was a targeted guilt bomb, designed to make Sarah feel responsible for her elderly parents spending Christmas alone. It was a blatant attempt to make her crack. Sarah held firm. "Mom, that's not true. You and Dad can come here for a quiet dinner or go to one of my brother's houses, or they could come to you and bring food. There are plenty of options that don't involve 20 people trashing my house." Her mother just sighed again and said, "It's just not the same," before hanging up. The next attack came from her sister-in-law, the queen of passive aggression. She started a new group chat, pointedly leaving Sarah out to try and salvage Christmas. Sarah only found out because her one sympathetic cousin sent her screenshots. In the chat, the sister-in-law was trying to organize a potluck at a community hall, but the whole conversation was a joke. She'd suggest things and then immediately shoot them down. "We could rent the hall, but it's probably so expensive. Everyone could bring a dish, but what if we don't have enough?" The entire performance was designed to fail, to create a paper trail proving that they tried, and it was just too hard, putting the blame for a failed Christmas right back on Sarah. The grand finale, though, was the most shocking. 2 weeks before Christmas, her brother, the one with the destructive kids, called. He didn't yell this time. His voice was eerily calm. He said, "Look, Sarah, we get that you're still upset, but you've made your point. Now it's time to be the bigger person. We've talked it over and we've decided we're just going to come over on Christmas Eve like always. We'll bring paper plates this time so we don't make a mess. See you around 4 p.m. He said it like he was doing her a favor, as if their decision to just show up uninvited was some grand gesture of forgiveness. He wasn't asking. He was informing her. He truly believed they could just override her decision by forcing themselves into her home. This is no longer just about a messy party. This has escalated into a full-blown power struggle. This family is so deep in their entitlement they cannot imagine a world where Sarah's no is a final answer. They're treating her boundary not as a wall, but as a hurdle they just need to get over. Let's break down their tactics. The mothers, I guess, will be all alone. Routine is pure emotional blackmail, signed to trigger Sarah's guilt. The sister-in-law's fake planning committee is what you'd call performative helplessness. It's a way to look like you're trying to solve the problem while actually making sure it's unsolvable without the original host. It's a total sham. But the brothers' phone call is the worst part. Announcing that they are just going to come over anyway is a stunning display of arrogance. It's a massive violation of her rights as a homeowner and a person. It's them saying, "Your no doesn't matter. Our wants are more important than your right to control who enters your own home." This is where it crosses a line from a family squabble into something way more serious. It's about consent. They are trying to force this event on her without her consent. For 10 years, Sarah was the one who did all the work, who served them. Now that she's asserted her own authority, they're in shock, and they are using every manipulative tool they have to force her back into her old role. They don't see her as a person with needs and limits. They see her as a utility that suddenly stopped working. And their goal isn't to figure out why it broke. It's to bang on the side of the machine until it starts working again. Sarah was understandably floored by her brother's announcement. For a moment, she was speechless. The nerve was breathtaking. But then that simmering rage from last year boiled over into icy resolve. She took a deep breath, and her voice, she writes, was colder than she had ever heard it. "Let me be perfectly clear," she said. "You are not coming to my house. I have not invited you. If you show up on my property on Christmas Eve, you will be trespassing. I will not open the door. If you refuse to leave, I will call the police." There was a stunned silence. Her brother stammered, You'd call the cops on your own family on Christmas." "I would call the cops on anyone who shows up at my home uninvited and refuses to leave," she replied. "This is not a negotiation. Do not come to my house. Am I clear?" He hung up on her. Sarah immediately called her parents and other siblings and repeated the message. "I want to be crystal clear. We are not hosting. We will not be home to visitors. Anyone who shows up will be turned away. If you try to force it, we will involve law enforcement. This is our final word." On Christmas Eve, Sarah and her husband turned off the front lights, locked the doors, and retreated to their cozy den in the back. They put on a movie, opened some wine, and had a charcuterie board for dinner. It was quiet. It was peaceful. It was glorious. Around 5 p.m., a car pulled into their driveway. They watched on their security camera as her brother, his wife, and their kids got out. They marched to the front door and rang the doorbell. Then they knocked. Then they started banging on the door, their voices audible through the walls, calling her name. Sarah and her husband just sat there, silent, watching the tantrum on the monitor. After 10 minutes, they finally gave up, got back in their car, and left. Christmas Day was even quieter. They slept in, had coffee, and exchanged gifts. The only calls Sarah got were from her supportive cousin, wishing them a Merry Christmas, and from her husband's parents, who apologized for the family's behavior and said they understood completely. The rest of the family was silent. It was, Sarah writes, the most peaceful Christmas she'd had in a decade. She felt no guilt, only relief. So let's go back to the original question. AITA for canceling Christmas. My verdict is a resounding not the a-hole, not even in the slightest. What Sarah did wasn't selfish. It was an act of self-preservation. She drew a line in the sand, not to be cruel, but to protect her home, her money, and most importantly, her sanity. She gave them plenty of notice. She communicated her decision clearly, and when her clear no was ignored, she enforced her boundary. Threatening to call the police sounds extreme, but it was a direct response to an extreme threat. Her own family threatening to show up uninvited. She didn't cancel Christmas, she reclaimed it. But that's just my opinion. I need to know what you all think. Was she justified, or did she go too far by threatening to call the cops? Is she the a-hole for ruining tradition, or is the family the a-hole for their massive entitlement? Get down in the comments and let me know your verdict, YTA or NTA. I want to hear it all. Now you know I can't leave it there. I went looking for the comments, and they did not disappoint. Let's see what the court of public opinion had to say. The top comment reads, NTA, you didn't cancel Christmas. You canceled your annual subscription to being the family doormat. The fact that they think the holiday is ruined just because they have to lift a finger tells you everything. The tradition was exploiting you. Good on you for locking the doors. I would have turned on the sprinklers. I love this. Canceled your annual subscription to being the family doormat is the most perfect summary. This commenter gets it. The tradition wasn't sacred, it was just convenient for them. And the sprinkler's idea, chef's kiss. A little petty, but after what they put her through, entirely deserved. Here's another. In TA, the pizza under the chair sent me into orbit. That's not just a mess, that's a statement of pure disrespect. They're not mad you canceled Christmas. They're mad they got called out on their slobbish, entitled behavior and are now facing a consequence. Hold that boundary up, let them throw their tantrums. This person locked onto the detail that got me too. The pizza is the symbol for the whole issue, it's deliberate. And the commenter is right. The family's anger isn't about a missed holiday. It's about being held accountable. For years, they got away with it. The moment rules and consequences showed up, they fell apart. Of course, we always have to find the dissenting opinion. One comment, heavily downvoted, said, ESH, everyone sucks here. Your family behaved terribly, but threatening to call the police on Christmas is a nuclear option that will permanently damage your relationships. Family is messy, and sometimes you just have to suck it up for the sake of peace and tradition. Okay, let's talk about this. I fundamentally disagree. First, the nuclear option was a response to her brother's threat to show up uninvited. She didn't lead with that, she was pushed to it. Second, the idea that you should suck it up to keep the peace is terrible advice. That peace is a false peace, one that exists only because Sarah sacrifices her own well-being. That's not peace, that's appeasement. And the cleaning service offer misses the point entirely. You can't hire someone to undo the feeling of being disrespected in your own home. Hard disagree with this one. Here's a more practical comment. In TA, as the person who always hosts, this story is my vindication. A word of advice to OP, get ready for them to try again next year. They will forget this and assume you're over it. In October, send the exact same email. Make not hosting Christmas your new tradition. This is sage advice. Entitlement has a short memory. This family will likely try to sweep this all under the rug and expect things to go back to normal. Sarah is going to have to be just as firm, making not hosting Christmas The new tradition is a brilliant way to frame it. And finally, a humorous one. In TA, I'm just imagining the scene on the security camera. A whole family of Grinches trying to break into Hovel because they're mad they have to make their own roast beast. The irony is delicious. Please tell me you saved the footage. I have to admit, the visual is pretty hilarious. It's a perfect Grinch reversal. The people who are supposed to be full of Christmas cheer are the ones trying to break down the door, while the person they labeled the Grinch is inside, peacefully enjoying the holiday. I also hope she saved the footage. It would make for a great holiday card. This story is a perfect example of something we see more and more online, often called the host strike. It's when the one person who always hosts family gatherings, usually a woman, finally gets fed up with doing all the work and just stops. They refuse to do the planning, cooking, and cleaning that everyone else takes for granted. And the reaction, just like in Sarah's story, is almost always outrage and accusations of being selfish. What these stories really show is a deep-seated issue in many families around emotional labor. That's all the invisible work that goes into managing relationships and family life. Hosting a holiday is a massive job, physically and emotionally. You're planning menus, coordinating schedules, managing different personalities, creating a festive mood, and then cleaning up the disaster. For years, Sarah did 100% of this work. Her family's behavior, especially trashing the house, is more than just laziness. It's a display of dominance, a way of showing they have no respect for her authority in her own home. They were acting like defiant kids testing limits, because for years there were no limits. Sarah's refusal to host is a textbook case of setting healthy boundaries. When you're constantly taken for granted, sometimes the only way to make people see how much you do is to stop doing it. Her decision to say no wasn't about punishment. It was about self-protection. So many hosts feel trapped by guilt and obligation, which leads to burnout and resentment. The only way out is to just drop the rope. The family's reaction also follows a predictable pattern. The system that worked so well for them was disrupted, and they panicked. The accusations, the emotional blackmail, the attempt to just show up anyway, it's all about trying to restore the comfortable status quo. It shows how much they relied on our free labor that the whole family structure threatened to collapse without it. So if you find yourself in a similar spot, take a page from Sarah's book. Say what you need to say clearly. Be ready for the backlash, and don't let guilt-tripping change your mind. You are not responsible for managing the feelings of other adults who are mad they now have to do their own work. Your peace matters more than a tradition that's built on your silent sacrifice. And that is a wrap on this incredibly wild and validating story. It's a powerful reminder that no is a full sentence and that you have every right to protect your peace, even during the holidays. Thank you so much for watching. I live for your comments and your verdicts, so keep them coming. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we're diving into our next case. Until then, stay safe, set your boundaries, and don't let anyone shove pizza under your furniture. I'll see you in the next video. This is about a man who thought he could secretly blow thousands and thousands of dollars on himself, funding his own lavish lifestyle while his kids went without. He thought his deception was foolproof, that he was smarter than the woman he'd built a life with. But she found out. And she didn't just get mad. She got methodical. She planned a holiday surprise he would never, ever forget. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about a woman taking her power back, one receipt at a time. Let's get into it. So our storyteller, let's call her Clara, starts by painting a picture of her life. It's probably a picture a lot of you would recognize. She and her husband, Mark, had been together for 15 years. On the outside, they were living the suburban dream, a modest but comfy house, a yard for their two kids, Lily and Tom, and what everyone thought was a rock-solid partnership. They weren't rich, not by a long shot, but they were a team, or so she thought. Clara says she was the planner, the one who managed the family calendar, the school events, the doctor's appointments. Mark, on the other hand, handled the money. It was a deal they made early on. He claimed he had a knack for numbers, and he promised her he'd manage their joint accounts and keep them on track for their goals. A little savings for the kids' college, a family vacation each year, and a decent retirement. Clara trusted him completely. I mean, why wouldn't she? It was the foundation of their marriage. For the first decade, everything seemed to be going just fine. They were a well-oiled machine. But looking back, Clara realizes that over the last few years, their weekly financial check-ins had kind of fizzled out. Whenever she'd ask how they were doing, Mark would get dismissive, but in this charming way. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about it," he'd say with a smile. "I've got it all under control. We're doing great." And because she wanted to believe him, she let it go. It was just easier to believe the dream was real than to start questioning the guy who built it. But over the past year, things started to feel off. It wasn't one big thing, just a bunch of small, unsettling changes. Mark started working late more often. When he was home, he was glued to his phone, always angled away from her. The guy who used to share every detail of his day now gave one-word answers. The easy laughter that used to fill their house was gone, replaced by this quiet, heavy tension. Clara tried to talk to him about it, asking if something was wrong, but every time she was met with a wall of defensiveness. He'd accuse her of being needy or imagining things. "Everything is fine, Clara," he'd sigh, with this irritated tone that just made her feel small. "Why do you always have to create drama?" He was an expert at twisting her concerns back on her, making her feel like the problem. She started to feel less like a partner and more like a pest. It turns out this is a classic dynamic when one partner is being incredibly selfish. They make the other person feel invisible, like their needs don't matter at all. She was living that reality, feeling like she was fading into the background of her own life. She felt him slipping away, but she had no idea the real betrayal wasn't just emotional distance. It was a calculated financial deception that was bleeding their family dry. The story then shifts to the holiday season, a time that Clara had always loved. But this year, the magic was completely overshadowed by money stress. In early November, Mark sat her down, looking all serious. He told her that because of market downturns and unexpected expenses, their budget was going to be super tight. "We're going to have to be really frugal with Christmas," he'd said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "It's all about the kids, right? We don't need to exchange big gifts." Clara, always the practical one, agreed right away. Her heart ached for her kids, who had circled half the toy catalog, but she got it. You have to be responsible. So she went into full-on money-saving mode, clipping coupons, planning meals down to the penny, and hunting for second-hand toys she could fix up. She actually felt proud of herself, like she was being a true partner, making sacrifices for the family. The irony, she later wrote, was so thick it was suffocating. The moment that unraveled everything came from an innocent-looking email. Clara was on their family computer looking for a cookie recipe. Mark's email was still logged in, which wasn't weird. She was about to log out when a subject line caught her eye. "Your order confirmation for Velocity Performance Parts." Curiosity got the best of her and she clicked it open. Her heart did a weird little flip. It was a receipt. A very, very long receipt for a custom exhaust system, high-performance air filters, and a set of premium racing tires. These were parts for Mark's hobby car, a vintage muscle car he tinkered with in the garage. But the parts weren't the shock. The real shock was the total at the bottom, $4,752. Clara just stared at the screen. The number didn't feel real, nearly $5 grand. That was more than their Christmas budget for the last 3 years combined. It was the emergency fund they were supposed to be rebuilding. Her mind raced, trying to find any other explanation. A mistake, a phishing scam, anything seemed more likely than the simple, ugly truth. That night she decided to confront him. She tried to be calm, not accusatory. She didn't want to fight, she just wanted an explanation that made sense. "Hey," she started, holding up her phone with the email. "I saw this on the computer. I think there must be a mistake. It says you spent almost $5,000 on car parts." The change in him was instant and chilling. His relaxed expression vanished, replaced by a cold defensiveness. He didn't even look at the phone. "Oh, that," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "It was a business thing. I bought them for a guy at work. He paid me back in cash." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, it almost sounded real. But something in his eyes, a flicker of panic he couldn't hide, told her everything. "In cash," she repeated, her voice just a whisper. "Mark, who carries around $5,000 in cash. And why wouldn't he just pay the company directly?" His face hardened. "Why are you interrogating me? I told you what it was, it's handled. Are you calling me a liar?" And there it was, the classic gaslighting she'd gotten so used to. He was turning her valid question into an attack on his character. In that moment, Clara knew. She didn't have all the proof yet, but she knew deep in her bones that he was lying. And that one blatant lie was the crack that broke the foundation of their entire life. The days after that confrontation were a blur of quiet rage and cold clarity for Clara. Mark acted like nothing had happened, going back to his charming, distant self. But for Clara, a switch had been flipped. The trust wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. And with that trust gone, all she wanted was the truth. She knew she couldn't rely on him to give it to her. If she wanted answers, she'd have to find them herself. She was no longer a partner. She was an investigator in her own home. Her investigation started late at night, after everyone was asleep. The family computer became her command center. First, she went into their joint bank account and started printing out statements, going back a month, then 3, then a full year. As the printer hummed, her stomach churned. With every page, her world tilted a little more. She sat at the kitchen table with a stack of highlighters and started marking every transaction she didn't recognize. At first, they were small, a $20 lunch here, a $50 charge there. But as she went further back, the amounts got bigger. There were charges from high-end clothing stores, payments to subscription services she'd never heard of, and then the car parts. That $4,700 charge was just the beginning. She found dozens of other transactions from automotive websites, totaling thousands more. He wasn't just maintaining his hobby car. He was building a professional-grade racing machine with their family's money. She started a spreadsheet, meticulously logging every suspicious purchase. As she typed, the total grew at a sickening rate. 5,000, 8,000, 12,000. She felt a wave of nausea. This was the money he claimed they didn't have. This was why their daughter couldn't get braces last year. This was why they'd canceled their summer vacation. The sacrifices had been completely one-sided. She and the kids were living a life of scrimping and saving, while he was living a secret life of luxury. Experts say that the feeling of betrayal from this kind of financial infidelity can be just as painful, if not more so, than finding out about a romantic affair. It's a total breach of the partnership. But the numbers still didn't add up. She had a gut feeling there was more. She remembered how protective he'd been of his wallet lately and how some of his mail started going to his office. So she did some digital digging. She thought back to old email addresses and passwords they used to share. On her third try, an old pet's name worked. It was so simple, so stupid. Her hands were shaking as she went into his personal email. She felt a quick pang of guilt, but it was immediately burned away by her anger. She wasn't just snooping, she was searching for the truth he denied her. And she found it. Buried in his trash folder were deleted emails from a major credit card company, statements for a card she never knew existed. A card that was in his name only. She took a deep breath, went to the credit card company's website, used the forgot password feature, and sent a reset link to the email she was already in. Minutes later, he was staring at the secret financial life of the man she thought she knew. This is where the full betrayal hit her. The secret credit card was maxed out, $10,000. It was a storm of extravagant dinners, weekend trips to cities she'd never seen, expensive electronics, and even payments to a high-end golf club. She added the debt to her spreadsheet. The grand total of his secret spending over the last 18 months came to just over $27,000. Clara leaned back in her chair, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't just the money. It was the calculated, long-term deception. It was knowing that while she was stressing over groceries, he was whining and dining. Who? The question just hung there. He had made her feel crazy for worrying, all while he was systematically dismantling their future. He'd made her feel invisible, and now she knew why. He didn't see her or the kids as partners. They were just an obstacle. That night, the hurt and sadness crystallized into something else: resolve. She wasn't going to cry anymore. She wasn't going to scream. A messy, emotional fight was what he'd expect. It would let him play the victim. No, she wasn't giving him that satisfaction. He used their finances as a weapon against her, so she would use his own weapon against him. He hid his deception behind Christmas, so Christmas would be the stage for his downfall. The plan for her ultimate holiday payback began to form. It would be methodical, documented, and absolutely unforgettable. Okay, this is about to get intense and honestly good for her. While we're on the edge of our seats, if you're finding this story as gripping as I am, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us bring more of these incredible stories to light. Now, let's see how she pulls this off. In the weeks before Christmas, Clara became the master of a double life, a perfect mirror of the one Mark had been living. To him and the kids, she was the spirit of Christmas. She baked cookies, decorated the house, and hummed carols while wrapping gifts. She played the part so perfectly that Mark never suspected a thing. He saw her clipping coupons and probably thought she had just accepted their tight financial situation. But behind that facade, Clara was making moves. First, she quietly met with a top-rated divorce lawyer. She walked in with her binder of bank statements, the printouts from the secret credit card, and her spreadsheet. The lawyer confirmed her fears but also armed her with a plan. Document everything, separate her finances, and don't let him know she was onto him until she was ready to act. Following that advice, Clara opened her own bank account and redirected her small paycheck into it. Then she replanned Christmas for the kids. Using her own savings, she bought them a few of the key presents they wanted. Not everything, but enough to make their morning magical. She was funding their happiness while the joint account, drained by Mark, sat nearly empty. Christmas morning arrived. The tree was glowing, presents were piled underneath, and the kids were practically vibrating with excitement. Mark was in his element, playing the part of the proud dad, coffee in hand, a smug look on his face. He'd been dropping hints about some new headphones he wanted, clearly expecting a nice reward for all his hard work. The kids tore into their presents, squealing with joy. Lily got her art set, and Tom got the Lego space station he was sure they couldn't afford. Clara watched them, her heart aching with a mix of love and sadness. Finally, all the kids' presents were open. "Look, Daddy," Lily said, "there's one more, and it's a big one for you." There it was, a single, large box, wrapped beautifully in gold paper with a huge red bow. Mark's eyes lit up. Well, well, what have we here? He boomed, milking the moment. Your mom must really love me. He made a big show of unwrapping it. He lifted the lid, expecting to see some new gadget. Instead, he saw a binder, a thick black 3-ring binder. He stared at it, confused. What's this? He asked, his voice losing its confident boom. A project from work. No, Clara said, her voice perfectly steady. It's your gift. Open it. He hesitantly opened the cover. The first page was a simple title sheet, a comprehensive review of your personal expenditures, January-December. His face went white. He flipped to the first tab, labeled Secret Credit Card. Behind it, in plastic sleeves, were the statements from the Visa he thought she didn't know about, with every selfish purchase highlighted in yellow. He frantically flipped to the next tab, Velocity Performance Parts. There were the receipts for every car part, with the total listed in bold red font at the bottom. His hands were shaking now. He ripped to the third tab, the grand total. This was her masterpiece, a single-page spreadsheet that itemized everything. At the ver. Y bottom in a giant font was the final number, 27,341, 18 asterisk asterisk. Beside the total was a second column titled Family Opportunity Cost. It listed everything that money could have paid for: down payment on new house, Lily's orthodontic treatment, Tom's college fund, family vacation to Disney World. He looked up at her, his face a mask of horror. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. There's one more section, Mark, Clara said, her voice like ice. Tab 4. His trembling fingers found the last tab. It was labeled Our Future. Behind it were 2 documents. The first was a set of freshly filed divorce papers, listing financial infidelity as a primary cause. The second was her lawyer's business card. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the Christmas tree lights. The kids were in the other room, happily playing, totally oblivious. Mark finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. Clara, what is this? This is insane. You're insane. Clara stood up, looking down at the man who had become a stranger. No, Mark, she said, her voice full of a strength he'd never heard before. This is not insane. This is consequences. You already got your Christmas presents. You've been getting them all year. This, she said, gesturing to the binder in his lap, is just the receipt. The immediate aftermath was as ugly as Clara had expected. Mark's shock quickly morphed into rage. He shot up from his chair, the binder tumbling to the floor. You're blowing up our family. Over what? A little spending. Are you crazy? He hissed, keeping his voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. This was exactly what she'd prepared for. The denial, the blame shifting, trying to minimize his betrayal. But the old Clara, who would have flinched and questioned herself, was gone. The new Clara stood her ground. $27,000 is not a little spending, Mark, she replied calmly. It's a secret life. It's the money for our children's future. It's every no I had to tell our kids while you were buying everything you wanted. This isn't about the money anymore. It's about the lies. He then tried pleading, his eyes welling up with crocodile tears. Clara, baby, I'm so sorry. I messed up. Please, let's not do this. It's Christmas. Think about the kids. We can go to counseling. It was a good performance, but she had spent too many nights staring at his deceit in black and white to be swayed. He was only sorry because he got caught. Counseling is for partners who want to fix things, she said, stepping back from him. You haven't been my partner for a long time, and I am thinking of the children. I'm thinking about raising them in a home built on honesty and respect. That home is no longer with you. She laid out the terms she had rehearsed for weeks. I have a bag packed for you in the hallway. I want you to go to your parents' house. From now on, we'll only speak through our lawyers. You have until the end of the day to leave." The finality in her voice finally broke through. The anger and fake sadness disappeared, replaced by pure panic. He had been completely outmaneuvered. Late that afternoon, he walked out the door with a single duffel bag. He didn't even say goodbye. The click of the door closing was the most liberating sound Clara had ever heard. The house was finally quiet, a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence they'd been living in for a year. It was over. In her original post, our storyteller described the next few weeks as a strange kind of liberation. The house felt bigger, calmer. She explained to the kids in simple terms that Daddy would be living somewhere else for a while. It was tough, but the constant tension was finally gone. Clara felt like she could breathe again. The Christmas morning payback wasn't just revenge, it was an act of survival. But that's not where the story ends. She left an update a few months later, and folks, it gets even better. The divorce was messy, but her preparation made all the difference. Mark's lawyers tried to paint her as unstable, but you can't argue with a binder full of evidence. The judge saw his actions for exactly what they were, a deliberate misuse of marital money. The outcome was incredible. The secret $10,000 credit card debt was assigned only to Mark. She was awarded a larger portion of their assets to compensate for the money he'd wasted. And most importantly, she got to keep the house, giving her and the kids stability. As for Mark, he's not doing so well. Forced to confront the consequences, his life has unraveled. He's living in a small apartment, struggling with legal fees and the mountain of debt he created. And that expensive hobby car, he had to sell it for way less than what he put into it. Clara's update ends on a hopeful note. She says she and the kids just celebrated their first Christmas in their new life. It was simple, with just a few presents, but the house was filled with real laughter and peace. She ends by saying that she has her finances, her home, and most importantly, her self-respect back. And that, she writes, is the best gift she could have ever received. What an absolutely incredible story. It's a masterclass not just in revenge, but in empowerment. Clara took a situation of profound betrayal and refused to be a victim. That receipt on Christmas morning was more than just a list of his spending. It was a declaration of her own worth. This story is a powerful reminder of how devastating financial infidelity can be. It's not just about money. It's a deep violation of trust that can destroy a relationship. Mark believed he could live a double life, but Clara's methodical, documented, and legally sound response was the perfect takedown. So I have to ask, what do you think? Was this holiday payback justified, or was it too harsh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I have a feeling this one is going to spark a lot of conversation. And as always, if you enjoy stories about justice and people taking their power back, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. You won't want to miss our next video. We're diving into a story of corporate revenge where one employee takes on an entire company that wronged him, and the fallout is absolutely epic. See you next time. After years of my parents disrespecting my wife, I finally snapped and uninvited them from Christmas. Now, my whole family is telling me I'm the bad guy for choosing my wife over them. Here's the story. Have you ever been the one who has to keep the peace in a family that just refuses to respect your partner? If you've ever felt stuck in the middle, torn between the family you grew up with and the one you chose, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if this all sounds a little too familiar. For as long as I can remember, I was the family's peacemaker, the good son, the one who smoothed everything over, translated hurt feelings into misunderstandings, and just soaked up all the tension so everyone else could have a good time. It's a role I never asked for, but I sort of inherited it. My family had two settings for dealing with conflict: ignore it or escalate it. There was no in-between, so I learned to be the buffer. It was exhausting, but it felt like the only thing keeping the fragile peace from shattering completely. Then I met my wife, Sarah, and it was like taking a deep breath after being underwater. She was kind, brilliant, and funny, and she had this incredible emotional honesty I'd never seen before. With her, there were no mind games, no passive aggression. If something was wrong, we talked about it. We were a team. I knew almost right away that this was the woman I was going to build my life with. She was my person. When you get married, you're choosing to make that person your new primary family. It's a bond you build and choose every single day. I chose Sarah. I really thought my family would be happy for me, that they'd love her as much as I did. And in the beginning, it seemed like they did. The first few years of our relationship were okay, at least on the surface. My parents, especially my mom, seemed to welcome Sarah into the family. There were smiles, hugs, and invites to dinner. But just beneath all that, there was an undercurrent of something else, something unsettling. It started with small things, little paper-cut comments that were so subtle you could almost convince yourself you'd imagined them. I remember the first Christmas Sarah spent with my family. She'd spent weeks picking out the perfect gifts. She handed my mother her present, a cashmere scarf in her favorite color. My mom held it up and said, "Oh, this is nice. A bit extravagant, don't you think?" She smiled when she said it, but it was a tight, thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. I saw Sarah's face fall for just a second before she put on a polite laugh. But I saw it. I saw the hurt. And I did what I always did. I jumped in to smooth it over. "Mom, she just wanted to get you something special. We're happy to be here." My mom just patted my arm and said, "Of course, dear, it's lovely." The subject was dropped, but the sting was still there. These little incidents started piling up. They were like a collection of tiny wounds that didn't seem like a big deal on their own, but together they were starting to bleed. There was the time my dad called Sarah's master's degree in literature a cute little hobby. He was a man of action and couldn't seem to get his head around the fact that her intellectual pursuits were her career as a university lecturer. When Sarah tried to talk to him about a book she was teaching, he just waved her off. "I don't have time for fiction. Let's talk about the real world." Again, I saw that flash of pain in her eyes, and again I played the diplomat. "Dad, Sarah's work is important." He just grunted and changed the subject to the stock market. I told myself he just didn't get it. I made excuses for him. My mother's tactics were more subtle, more insidious. She was the queen of the backhanded compliment and subtle exclusion. At family gatherings, she'd tell stories from my childhood, painting this picture of a life Sarah wasn't part of, and then end with a sigh and a comment like, "Oh, but you wouldn't know about that, Sarah. This was long before your time." It was her way of constantly reminding Sarah she was an outsider, a guest star in a show that already had its main cast. She would forget Sarah's dietary restrictions, serving a main course she knew Sarah couldn't eat. Then came the fake surprise. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot you don't eat dairy. Well, there's plenty of salad." Then she'd look at me with these wide, innocent eyes, and I'd find myself defending her. "It's okay, Mom, honest mistake." But was it? After the third or fourth time, even I started to have my doubts. Sarah, to her credit, handled it all with a grace I could only admire. She never made a scene, never asked me to confront them. She'd just take it, and later, in the car on the way home, she'd let out a quiet sigh. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd force a smile and say, "I'm fine. They just take some getting used to." But I could see the toll it was taking. She got quieter at family events. She'd stick close to me, her bright personality dimming the second we walked through my parents' door. I was trapped. On one side was this lifelong duty to my parents. On the other was the fierce, protective love I had for my wife. The guilt was eating me alive, guilt for not defending her enough, and guilt for the resentment that was building toward my own parents. It was the classic loyalty test, and I was trying to walk this impossible tightrope between the two. In trying to please everyone, I was failing the one person who deserved my absolute support. I was failing my wife. The pressure was building, and I knew, deep down, that something had to give. The lead up to what I now call the last Christmas just felt different. We'd been married for 5 years, and the digs from my parents hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd gotten bolder. My mom started calling Sarah's design choices in our own home interesting, a word she used like a tiny dagger. My dad openly questioned my decision to support Sarah taking a semester to work part-time on a book, asking if I was really okay with being the sole breadwinner. It was a constant barrage of disrespect, and Sarah had lost weight. The light in her eyes was starting to go out. The holiday plan was the same as always. A huge Christmas Eve dinner at my parents' house, then a quiet Christmas morning for just the two of us at home, our one safe space. A few weeks before Christmas, my mom called. "Hi, darling," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "I'm just finalizing the menu for Christmas Eve, and I wanted to let you know we're having beef Wellington." My heart sank. Beef Wellington, her signature dish. And a dish that Sarah, a vegetarian for over a decade, couldn't touch. This wasn't an oversight. This was a message. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you know Sarah doesn't eat meat. We have this conversation every year." "Oh, I know," she laughed it off. "But it's Christmas. It's traditional. I'll make sure there are plenty of side dishes. She loves my roasted potatoes, right?" The casual cruelty of it stunned me. She wasn't just forgetting. She was deliberately excluding my wife from the main event of the holiday meal. She was making it crystal clear that Sarah's comfort and her identity were less important than my mother's tradition. I took a deep breath. "Mom, that's not good enough. You can't invite her to a celebration where she's treated like an afterthought. Can you please just make a main dish she can also eat?" Her voice turned cold. "I am not changing my menu for asterisk or asterisk. She's always so sensitive. It's one meal, she can make do." That phrase, "make do," it just echoed in my head. That's all Sarah had been doing for years. Making do with the passive aggression, the insults, the backhanded compliments. Making do with a husband who was too much of a coward to stand up for her. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with a rage I hadn't felt in years. I told Sarah what happened, expecting her to be upset, but she just looked tired, resigned. "It's okay," she said, her voice a whisper. "I'm used to it. I'll just eat before we go." And that was it. That was the moment I snapped. Seeing her so defeated, so completely worn down by my family's relentless toxicity, it broke my heart. Her acceptance of their disrespect was worse than any angry outburst. It meant she'd given up hope that things would ever change. She'd given up hope that I would ever make it change. This wasn't about the food anymore. It was about my mother calling my wife, that woman, to a cousin on the phone when she thought I wasn't listening. It was my father telling me I was punching above my weight on my wedding day. It was my sister telling Sarah her homemade cookies were a little dry, and then watching her throw the whole batch in the trash. I had spent years trying to keep the peace, but I finally realized that peace at the expense of my wife's dignity wasn't peace at all. It was just cowardice. It was time to stop being the peacemaker and start being her husband. My wife was my family, and I was going to protect her. The holiday from hell was officially canceled. The decision was made, and a weird sense of calm washed over me. I went back into the living room where Sarah was just sitting, staring into the fireplace. I sat down and took her hand. "We're not going," I said. She looked at me confused. "What, to your parents? We have to. It'll cause a huge fight." "Let it," I said, my voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "I'm done. I'm done watching them hurt you, and I'm done making excuses for them. We are spending Christmas, both Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, right here. In our home, just us. We'll order your favorite food, watch dumb movies, and have the peaceful holiday you deserve." Tears welled up in her eyes, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of relief. A real, genuine smile finally reached her eyes. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Okay, okay." That part was easy. The storm came next. I texted my parents. I knew a phone call would just turn into a shouting match, and I needed this to be firm and final. I wrote, "Mom and Dad, after our conversation, Sarah and I have decided we won't be coming for Christmas Eve. The constant disrespect towards Sarah is unacceptable, and we won't participate in it anymore. We'll be spending the holidays at our home. We can talk more after the holidays, but this decision is final." I hit send before I could chicken out. The silence lasted for exactly 3 minutes. Then my phone exploded. First, my mother, with a series of texts. "What is this nonsense? You're ruining Christmas over a piece of meat. She has you completely brainwashed. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, choosing her over your own family." I didn't answer. Then my dad called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was a chilling mix of fake confusion and barely hidden rage. "Son, I don't know what's gotten into you. Your mother is in tears. You're tearing this family apart. You need to call me and fix this. Now." This was it. The mask was off. The manipulation had always been subtle before, easy to deny. But now that there was a real consequence, their true colors were on full display. Next came the flying monkeys. My older sister, Jessica, was up first. "What did you do to Mom?" her text read. "She's hysterical. You can't just uninvite yourselves from Christmas. It's selfish. Sarah needs to learn to not be so sensitive." I actually replied to her, hoping for a shred of reason. "Jess, this isn't about being sensitive. It's about years of them treating my wife badly. I won't put her through it anymore." Her reply was instant. "So you're taking her asterisk side. Unbelievable. Dad paid for your college and this is the thanks he gets. You're letting her isolate you from us." And there was the narrative. I was the ungrateful son, and Sarah was the evil, manipulative witch. It's a classic toxic family playbook. When you set a boundary, you become the problem, not the behavior that made the boundary necessary in the first place. For the next 48 hours, my phone was a nightmare. Texts from an aunt I hadn't spoken to in months telling me I was breaking my parents' hearts. An email from an uncle about how blood is thicker than water. They were all closing ranks. Not a single person asked, "Hey, why do you feel this way?" Or "Is Sarah okay?" Their only concern was that I was disrupting their perfect family illusion. The most surreal moment was 2 days before Christmas. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. It was my father. He hadn't just shown up at our house in years. I opened the door. "We need to talk," he said, trying to push past me. "No," I said, blocking the doorway. "Not right now." "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. "I'm your father, let me in, we're going to sort this out." "This isn't a discussion, Dad. It's a decision. You are not welcome in our home as long as you treat my wife with disrespect. That goes for Mom, too." He just stared at me, his eyes wide with shock and fury. It was like he was seeing me for the first time, not as his kid, but as a grown man. The idea that he couldn't just boss his way into my home and force me to back down was completely foreign to him. "You will regret this," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're throwing away your family for that woman." "She is asterisk my family," I replied, my voice shaking a little, but my resolve was solid. "And I'm finally acting like it." He stared for another second, then turned without a word, got in his car, and sped off. I closed the door, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I had held the line. There was no going back. Section 4. The climax, the confrontation, and the boundary. Christmas Eve finally came. The day was strangely quiet. My phone, which had been buzzing nonstop, had gone silent. It was the calm of the cold shoulder, the silent treatment. The house smelled of the vegetarian lasagna Sarah was making. A fire was going, and Christmas music was playing softly. It was peaceful. It was everything our holidays had never been. But I knew it wasn't over. Around 6 p.m., right when we would have been sitting down for that tense dinner at my parents' house, my phone rang. It was my mother. I looked at Sarah. She gave me a small nod. "You should answer. You need to say it to them directly, for you." She was right. I took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello. I just can't believe you're actually doing this." My mother's voice was tight with rage. "We're all here. Your sister, your cousins. Everyone is asking where you are. Your seat is empty. Are you happy now? Did you make your point?" The guilt trip was immediate and heavy. For years it would have worked, but not Thigh. "It's time." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This isn't about punishment. This is about a boundary. We told you we would not tolerate the disrespect anymore." "Disrespect," she shrieked. "I have done nothing but welcome that girl into our family. I have treated her like a daughter. This is all in her head. She's overly sensitive and she has twisted your mind against us." This was the moment. Back down and reset the toxic cycle, or hold the line. I looked at Sarah, who was watching me with so much love in her eyes. She was my anchor. "No, Mom, it is not in her head," I said, my voice getting stronger. "Let me be very clear." And then I brought out the receipts. "When you called her that woman at her own birthday dinner, that was disrespect. When Dad called her master's degree a cute hobby, that was disrespect. When you deliberately made a main course you knew she couldn't eat and then said she could make do, that was the final straw. That was a conscious act of exclusion." Silence on the other end. I wasn't talking about feelings anymore. I was talking about facts she couldn't deny. "We have been together for 7 years," I continued. "Sarah is my wife. She will be the mother of your future grandchildren. She is not an afterthought, and she is not a temporary guest. She is asterisk this family, my primary family." I took another breath. "My wife is my family. The disrespect stops now. You are not welcome in our home, and we will not be coming to yours until you can acknowledge the hurt you've caused and agree to treat her with respect." I could hear my father muttering in the background. My mother finally spoke, her voice dripping with venom. "So that's it then. You've made your choice." "Yes," I said, and the word felt like a weight lifting off my chest. "I have. I choose my wife. I choose our peace. I love you both, but my loyalty is to my marriage. That's not up for debate." "Then I guess we have nothing more to say," she said, her voice ice cold. She hung up. I looked at the phone, then at Sarah. Her eyes were shining with tears. She came over and wrapped her arms around me, and I just held her. The adrenaline slowly faded, replaced by an incredible sense of relief. It was done. It was the hardest conversation of my life, but it was also the most necessary. I had finally chosen my wife, our future, over a toxic past. And in that quiet, peaceful living room, I knew without a doubt that I had made the right choice. The aftermath wasn't some dramatic explosion. It was a deafening silence. The texts and calls just stopped. We were being given the silent treatment by the entire family. In the past, this would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and anxiety. But this time it felt different. It felt like peace. Christmas Eve turned into the best we'd ever had. We ate lasagna, laughed, and actually talked without any tension. We exchanged gifts slowly, enjoying the moment. There was no one to perform for, it was just us. Christmas morning was even better. We woke up late, drank coffee by the fire, and just enjoyed the quiet. For the first time, the holiday felt like a real break, a real celebration. I kept looking at Sarah all day. The tension in her shoulders was gone. She was smiling more freely. The light was back in her eyes. Seeing her so happy and relaxed in our home confirmed it for me. I hadn't ruined Christmas. I had saved it. Of course, it wasn't perfect. There were pangs of sadness. I thought about my parents, angry and hurt. I mourned the supportive family I wished I had. It's a weird kind of grief, mourning people who are still alive. A few days later, a package arrived from my sister. It was our Christmas gifts with a short, passive-aggressive note. "Thought you should have these, since we won't be seeing you." I showed it to Sarah. She looked at the note, then at me. "Are you okay?" "I am," I said, and I was surprised that I meant it. A few years ago, this would have destroyed me. I would have called her, apologized for nothing, and begged her to forgive me. But now, it just feels sad. Sad for her. Sad that this is how she thinks family works. The silence from my family wasn't a punishment anymore. It was a consequence. And in that silence, we found something we hadn't had in years: peace. The absence of their drama was a presence in itself, the presence of safety and of a home that was finally our sanctuary. The months that followed were quiet. Eventually, my sister started sending superficial texts. "How are you?" trying to sweep everything under the rug. But I knew we could never go back to the way things were. True reconciliation needs accountability, and they weren't offering any. About 6 months later, my mother called for my birthday. It was awkward. She talked about the weather, a neighbor, anything but the elephant in the room. Finally, she said, "Well, we miss seeing you." "I miss you too, Mom," I said, "but nothing has changed. My wife is my prio. Riddy and our home is a place of respect. That boundary is permanent." "I see," she said, her voice flat. "Well, happy birthday." And that was it. That conversation made me realize this was about more than just one Christmas. It was about breaking a cycle. I had been raised to believe that blind loyalty to the family unit was everything, even if it meant accepting harmful behavior to keep the peace. But I learned that healthy loyalty isn't blind. My loyalty to my wife, the family I chose and built, had to come first. Protecting her was honoring my vows. Look, if you're watching this and you feel trapped in a similar spot, I get it. The pressure to keep the peace is huge, especially around the holidays. But please hear me when I say this. Setting a boundary isn't an act of war. It's an act of self-preservation. You are not responsible for your family's reaction to your healthy choices. Start by getting on the same team as your partner. A united front is everything. Practice what you'll say. Simple phrases like, "We've decided to have a quiet holiday at home this year," are powerful. And give yourself permission to redefine what family and holidays mean to you. It might not be a picture-perfect painting, and that's okay. It might be a quiet day at home with the person you love. It's about creating new traditions that actually bring you joy. The next Christmas, Sarah and I rented a small cabin in the mountains. We spent the week hiking, reading, and just being together. There were no tense phone calls, no passive-aggressive comments, no walking on eggshells. It was just peace. And it was on that trip that we decided we were ready to start a family of our own. I didn't choose my wife over my parents to be spiteful. I chose her because she is my present and my future. My parents will always be my past, and I'll always love them in a way. But my children will grow up in a home where they see their parents as a loving, united team. They'll learn that respect is non-negotiable, and that real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dignity. In choosing my partner, I didn't destroy my family. I started a new one, built on respect and unwavering love. And that quiet, snowy holiday in the mountains was the most meaningful one I've ever had. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to make a tough choice to protect your peace, please consider subscribing and sharing. You're not alone in this, and your story matters. Thanks for watching. So, I think I might have single-handedly ruined Thanksgiving for my entire family by serving them professional-grade sushi instead of turkey. The night ended with a screaming match, doors slamming and tires screeching out of my driveway. Now I'm officially the family villain, and my phone is blowing up with texts calling me a selfish, tradition-hating monster. But standing here, in the silence of my own home, surrounded by platters of what I thought was an incredible, generous meal, I have to ask myself, am I the asshole? Because this one got wild, and I really need to know where you all stand on this. For as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving has been my holiday. Not because I love it the most, but because for the past 6 years, my house has been the designated family battlefield. The moment my wife and I bought a house with an actual dining room, my family collectively passed the hosting torch to me. And honestly, I didn't mind. I like to cook, I like a full house, and I enjoy the controlled chaos. But if I'm being brutally honest, I was getting tired. Not just of the cleanup and the planning, but of the sheer monotony of it all. Every single year, it was the exact same script. The same green bean casserole from a recipe my grandmother got off a soup can in the 60s. The same lumpy mashed potatoes my Uncle Frank insists on making, despite all evidence pointing to the fact he's never met a potato masher he could operate. The same dry, overcooked turkey everyone drowns in gravy just to make it edible. We were a family trapped in a culinary time loop, and I was the warden of this beige-colored, flavor-deficient prison. This year I decided was going to be different. The idea hit me in late October. My wife Sarah and I were at our favorite sushi spot for our anniversary, one of those high-end places where the chefs are basically artists. We watched them build this massive party platter for a corporate event, and it was a masterpiece. A beautiful, shimmering mosaic of dragon rolls, spicy tuna, and delicate nigiri. I just thought, now that's a feast. That is a truly special, celebratory meal. The idea took root. Why not? Why couldn't our Thanksgiving feast be exciting, delicious, and not require me to baste a giant bird for 48 hours? It was a quality, high-effort, celebratory meal. It ticked all the boxes, just not the traditional ones. I knew I had to be careful. 2 weeks before the big day, I sent a message to the family group chat. Hey everyone, quick heads up for Thanksgiving this year. Sarah and I are going to take care of all the food. You don't need to bring anything at all, just yourselves. Looking forward to hosting you. I thought this was brilliant. No one could complain about cooking. No arguments over who brings what. The responses were all enthusiastic. Wow, you don't have to do that, my mom replied. Are you sure? That's so generous, said my aunt. Not a single person asked what was on the menu. Not one. I took their silence as blissful trust. I now realize it was blissful assumption. The next week was a blur of research. I found a renowned sushi catering company that delivered. I worked with them to design the ultimate spread. We had classic tuna, salmon, and yellowtail for the purists. We had elaborate rolls with tempura shrimp and softshell crab for the adventurous. There were unagi rolls, decadent fatty tuna, and even vegetarian options with avocado and roasted sweet potato as a little nod to the holidays' flavors. It was expensive, very expensive. Way more than I'd ever spent on a turkey, but I was excited. I felt like I was giving my family a gift, a unique experience. Thanksgiving Day arrived. The house was clean, the table was set with Japanese-style ceramics I'd bought for the occasion, and for the first time in years I was completely relaxed. No oven to watch, no pots boiling over. The platters arrived an hour before everyone else and they were breathtaking, stunning. It looked like a photo from a food magazine and I was so proud. The family trickled in around 3 p.m. My dad walked in, sniffed the air and chuckled. "Huh, doesn't smell like turkey." I just smiled back. "Got a surprise for you this year, Dad." Then Aunt Carol arrived with Uncle Frank. Aunt Carol is the self-appointed guardian of family traditions. She walked in, saw my calm demeanor, and her eyes narrowed. "You seem calm," she said, her voice dripping with suspicion. "Where's the bird?" "Patience, Aunt Carol," I chirped. As more people arrived, I could feel this hum of confusion. People were peeking into the kitchen. My 7-year-old niece finally asked loudly, "Mommy, where's the food? I'm hungry." It was time. With a flourish, I called everyone into the kitchen. "All right, everyone, Thanksgiving dinner is served." Sarah and I stood proudly by the island. I gestured to the magnificent spread. And then just silence. Not awestruck silence. A dead, cold, confused silence. 20 people, us staring. My dad broke the void. He blinked a few times and said, "What is that?" "It's sushi," I said, my voice full of a cheerfulness that was quickly curdling. "It's a Thanksgiving sushi feast." My 7-year-old niece screamed, "You fish," and hid. That was the signal for the dam to break. "Sushi," Aunt Carol's voice was sharp. "You're serving us raw fish for Thanksgiving." "It's not all raw," I stammered. "There's tempura and cooked eel and vegetarian rolls." "That's not Thanksgiving dinner," Uncle Frank grumbled. "Where's the stuffing? Where are the mashed potatoes? Where is the turkey?" He said turkey like it was a sacred relic I just spat on. "I told you guys I was handling the food," I said, my smile straining. "I wanted to do something different, something special." "Special," my own mother said, her face a mask of disappointment. "Honey, Thanksgiving is about tradition. It's about the smells and flavors we remember." And just like that, it wasn't about food anymore. It was about my perceived betrayal of our shared history. "I appreciate that," I said, my voice rising, "but we've had that exact same meal for 30 years. I thought we could try something new. This is incredible food." Aunt Carol laughed. "I don't care if it was flown in by the Emperor of Japan himself. This is America, it's Thanksgiving. We eat turkey." My cousin Mike, the quiet one, suddenly piped up. "Whoa, this is awesome," he said, grabbing a spicy tuna roll. "You guys are crazy. This is a major upgrade from Uncle Frank's lumpy potatoes." Uncle Frank shot him a look that could curdle milk. "Mike, don't encourage him," my sister snapped. "This is ridiculous. You can't just change Thanksgiving." "I can do whatever I want in my own house," I shot back, finally losing my cool. "I spent a fortune on this. I did all the work so none of you had to lift a finger, and you're complaining about a free, gourmet meal." "It's not about the money," Aunt Carol shrieked. "It's about respect. Respect for your family, respect for tradition. You think you're so much better than us with your fancy city fish." My dad, looking genuinely hurt, stepped forward. "Son, we were just looking forward to a normal Thanksgiving. That's all." Sarah tried to intervene. "Okay, everyone, let's just calm down. Let's just try it." Her plea fell on deaf ears. My sister's husband, Tom, pulled out his phone. "This is absurd," he declared. "I'm not eating this. I'm ordering a pizza." That was the final straw. "You will not order a pizza to my house on Thanksgiving," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Then what are my kids supposed to eat?" my sister cried. "There's miso soup, there's rice, there are avocado rolls." I was yelling now, pointing at each item like a madman. "Or they could, God forbid, try something new." "You are so selfish," Aunt Carol yelled. "You've ruined Thanksgiving." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My sister grabbed her kids' coats. "We're leaving." Tom was already on the phone, presumably with Domino's. Uncle Frank and Aunt Carol announced they'd go too, to salvage what's left of this holiday. My parents lingered. My mom, on the verge of tears, whispered, "Sweetheart, maybe you could have just warned us." A warning. I told you I was handling it. I shouldn't have to submit a menu for approval in my own home. And so they left. My dad wouldn't even look me in the eye. Within 10 minutes, my full house was empty. It was just me, Sarah, my cousin Mike, and his girlfriend. The four of us stood in the kitchen, staring at the mountain of beautiful, untouched sushi. The silence was deafening. Mike finally broke it. "Well," he said, picking up a piece of fatty tuna, "more for us, I guess." We ate. We sat at the huge, empty dining table and ate the most delicious sushi I'd ever had. But every single bite tasted like ash. Later that night, the text started. A cousin who wasn't even there texted me, "Heard you ruined Thanksgiving. Way to go." My sister sent a novel about how I'd traumatized her children and owed everyone an apology. The family villain. Was I naive to think my family, a group who considers paprika an exotic spice, would embrace this? Probably. But was I an asshole for wanting to share something I love? For thinking a special, high-effort meal was a gift, no matter what it was? I just don't know. Wow, reading that back, it is still an absolute mess. On one hand, you have tradition and expectations. On the other, generosity and the age-old question, whose house is it anyway? But I have to make a call. For me, this is a clear, resounding not the asshole and TA. First and most importantly, you told them weeks in advance, "I am handling all the food." That's a complete statement. The social contract changed right then. They were no longer participants in a potluck, they were guests. The expectation for a specific menu was a massive, deeply ingrained assumption on their part. It's not a host's job to psychically cater to the unstated assumptions of their guests. Your only job was to provide a meal, and you planned a spectacular one. Second, it's your home. That gives you the right to set the menu. Having your family not only reject the meal but demand a proper one is unbelievably entitled. The idea that Thanksgiving must be turkey is a cultural preference, not a moral law. Your home, your rules. Third, and this is crucial, you didn't phone it in. If you just ordered a few cheap pizzas, I might feel differently. But you put immense thought, effort, and a ton of money into creating a unique, high-quality experience. A professional sushi platter of that scale is a luxury. Your family's inability to see the generosity behind the gesture because it wasn't shaped like a bird is a failure of perspective on their part, not a failure of hosting on yours. Finally, their reaction was completely out of proportion. Disappointment is one thing. A few jokes, some light grumbling, that's family. But a screaming match, calling you selfish, storming out and accusing you of ruining a holiday, that is a nuclear-level meltdown. It speaks to deeper family dysfunctions where the meal is just the battlefield for older tensions. They didn't just disagree with your choice, they tried to humiliate you for it. So no, you're not the asshole. You were a generous host met with a shocking lack of grace. Of course, the internet is built for debating this kind of family drama. I found some of the top reactions to this exact situation, and they show the split perfectly. The top voted comment is firmly NTA. It reads, NTA. They were expecting a free meal and are mad they didn't get to dictate the menu from your wallet. A catered gourmet meal is a gift. They acted like entitled toddlers. The fact they stormed out to get a real meal proves it was never about family, it was only about the turkey. My reaction, exactly. This cuts right to the heart of it, the entitlement. The meal was a gift. You don't throw a tantrum about the color of a gift you get for free. Their anger was a power play because they lost control over the tradition. But you have to hear the other side. The second most upvoted comment went the other way. YTA. Soft YTA, but still. Thanksgiving in America is a cultural event with specific rituals. Turkey is the centerpiece. You unilaterally decided to change a major cultural tradition for 24 people without warning. It's like inviting people to a 4th of July barbecue and serving shepherd's pie. It doesn't matter how good the pie is, you missed the point. It comes across as arrogant, like your sophisticated taste is better than their beloved traditions. Okay, I have to be fair, I see this. There's a powerful emotional component to holiday meals. From this perspective, the host didn't just change the menu, they disrupted a core family ritual without consultation. Arrogant is harsh, but I can see how it was perceived that way. While I think the family's reaction was still way over the top, this comment is crucial for understanding why they reacted so badly. Finally, there's the nuanced middle ground. ESH. Everyone sucks here. Your family sucks for their horrific, entitled reaction. Full stop. But you're not blameless. You knew your family. Dropping a sushi bomb on them at 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day was, at best, naive and at worst, a deliberate provocation. A simple heads-up like, hey, thinking of doing sushi this year, what do you think? Would have avoided 99% of this drama. You played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. A ruined holiday. You know what? This one stings, but it has a point. It's the pragmatic take. While you weren't morally wrong, maybe you were strategically wrong. You knew your family's preferences and chose a path guaranteed to create conflict. Could the whole thing have been avoided with a simple text? Yes. Does that make you an asshole? I don't think so. But it doesn't make their actions morally equivalent to a group of adults throwing a collective tantrum. Their behavior is what truly defines the situation for me. But now I want to know what you all think. Was I the asshole for bringing a taste of Japan to a traditional American holiday? Or was my family completely out of line? Drop your verdict in the comments below. NTA, YTA, ESH. I want to see it all. Let's get the debate going. If you enjoyed this story, and let's be honest, who doesn't love a bit of family drama, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one. My sister screamed that I'd destroyed our family. My parents called me a villain. And why? Because after a lifetime of cleaning up her messes, I finally said no. This is the story of how my family's golden child finally got what was coming to her, and I watched the whole thing burn to the ground. You know, family is supposed to be your safe harbor, right? The one place you can go where you're loved no matter what. For me, it was never a harbor. It was a battlefield, and I was the soldier they sent to fight wars I didn't start, all for a queen who never even knew I existed. That queen was my sister, Amelia. And my parents, they're the ones who built her throne. For as long as I can remember, the dynamic was obvious. Amelia was the sun, and I was some distant planet forgotten until my gravity was needed to fix something. It wasn't just in my head. Psychologists actually have names for this: the golden child and the scapegoat. The golden child can do no wrong. They're perfect, they get all the praise, and consequences are for other people. The scapegoat, well, they're the problem. They get the blame for everything wrong in the family. It's a way for parents to avoid dealing with their own issues. I didn't know the terms back then, but I lived that reality every single day. Turns out, it's incredibly common. Some studies show that nearly 70% of parents admit to having a favorite child. It's a poison that ruins sibling relationships and can cause lifelong anxiety and depression for everyone involved. Amelia wasn't just the golden child, she was practically glowing. 3 years older than me, she had this sparkle my parents were obsessed with. She was charming, fun, and completely irresponsible. She learned early on that rules didn't apply to her. When she broke a neighbor's window with a baseball, I was the one sent over to apologize, my voice trembling, with my allowance money in hand to help pay for it. The excuse was always, "You're just more responsible, honey. You can handle it." When she failed a class in high school, my parents got her a private tutor and a new laptop to help her focus. When I was struggling with calculus, I was just told to try harder. These kinds of double standards are classic signs of this toxic family setup. The favorite gets perks and a slap on the wrist, while the other kid has to be independent and carry all the weight. I basically became a parentified child, forced into adult responsibilities way too young. I was the family fixer, the one who had to keep the peace that they were constantly blowing up for Amelia. I remember one Christmas like it was yesterday. I was 16 and had been working at a bookstore, saving every dime for a used car. I had just over $1,000, which felt like $1 million. A week before Christmas, Amelia, who was 19, came to me in a total panic. She'd maxed out Mom's credit card on a trip with friends she wasn't supposed to go on. She cried, she begged, she swore she'd pay me back. "You have to help me, Sarah," she sobbed. "They'll kill me. You're the only one who can fix this." And fixing things was my job. It was the only way I thought I could earn my keep. So I went to the bank, pulled out every dollar I had, and handed it to her. I felt sick, like I was watching my dream die, but there was a tiny spark of hope. Maybe this time they'd see my sacrifice. Maybe this time I'd be the hero. On Christmas morning, Amelia opened a massive gift. It was a brand new convertible from our parents, a reward for, and I quote, turning things around and being more responsible with her finances. I got a sweater. My parents just beamed at her, glowing with pride. Later, when I quietly asked my mom about the money, she just waved her hand. "Oh, honey, don't be so dramatic. Amelia needed a fresh start. You're great with money. You'll save it up again in no time." I never did. The car never happened, but the pattern was set in stone. My successes were expected, and my sacrifices were invisible. Amelia's mere existence was a cause for celebration. This kind of dynamic is incredibly damaging. The unfavored child often grows up feeling worthless and rejected, and that follows you. You learn to be fiercely independent because you know you can't rely on your parents for anything. And that was me. I put myself through college, working 2 jobs and living on ramen. I graduated with honors, landed a good job in finance, and built my own life, brick by painful brick. Meanwhile, Amelia just drifted. She dropped out of 3 different colleges, and each time it was some dramatic story about a mean professor or unfair rules. My parents paid for every single failed attempt. She bounced between dead-end jobs, always quitting because the work was beneath her. All the while, my parents paid her rent, her car payments, and for her shopping trips. And when they ran low on cash, the calls would start. "Sarah, honey, your sister, in a bit of a tight spot. Sarah, we were hoping you could help Amelia with rent this month. You're doing so well, and she's just trying to find her feet." For years, I did it. I sent money, knowing exactly where it was going. I did it out of some twisted sense of duty, a tiny, fading hope that one day they'd finally see me. I was enabling the people who were enabling her. In families like this, the responsible sibling often gets roped into keeping the whole broken system running. I was funding a lifestyle that kept my sister a permanent teenager and my parents free of any real consequences. With every dollar I sent, a piece of me withered. The resentment was a slow burn in my chest. I was losing respect for them, and worse, for myself. Then everything changed when I met my husband, Mark. He saw the whole sick dynamic for what it was. He saw my strength, but he also saw the pain it caused me. He was the first person to ever look me in the eye and say, "It's okay to say no." He helped me realize their demands weren't about love, they were about entitlement. My first no was small. My parents called asking for $500 for Amelia's car trouble. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, I can't right now." The silence on the other end was deafening. My mother finally just stammered, "Oh, well, I guess we'll figure something out." And they did. They always did. But a line was drawn in the sand. Over the next few years, I got better at saying no. It was hard. Every single time I was hit with guilt trips and emotional blackmail. They'd call me selfish, ungrateful, cold-hearted. The more I pulled away, the harder they pushed. It's a classic manipulation tactic where they pit you against each other to stay in control. My parents would tell me how disappointed Amelia was, how I was the one tearing the family apart. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. I was 34, happily married and pregnant with our first child. We had just poured everything we had into our first home. We were stretched thin, but we were so happy. Then the phone call came. It was my mother, her voice dripping with fake crisis. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about Amelia." I braced myself. "What's wrong?" "She's being evicted," my mother whispered dramatically. "Her landlord is just a horrible, horrible man. He's kicking her out." I waited. I knew what was coming next. "She has nowhere to go, Sarah. And you and Mark have that big new house. You have so much space." And there it was. They weren't just asking for my money anymore. They were demanding my home. They wanted me, a pregnant woman setting up a nursery, to blow up my life for my 37-year-old sister who'd never been responsible for anything. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it felt like an earthquake. "What do you mean, no?" My mother gasped, genuinely shocked. "I mean no, she can't live with us." "But she's your sister. She'll be on the street. We can't take her, our place is too small. You have a guest room." "The guest room is going to be a nursery, Mom. I'm pregnant. We need that room for our baby." There was a pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, looking for a new angle. "Don't you think you're being a little selfish, Sarah? This is what family is for." And just like that, something inside me broke for good. All the years of resentment of being the invisible daughter, the family ATM, the fixer, it all came crashing together in one moment of cold, hard clarity. This wasn't about help. It was exploitation. They actually believed they were entitled not just to my money, but to my home, my peace, and my future. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "Amelia is a grown woman. She made her choices. It is not my job to save her from them anymore. My job is to my husband and my child. The answer is no, and it's not up for discussion." I hung up the phone before she could say another word. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I had finally chosen myself. I didn't know it then, but I had just lit the match. The explosion was immediate. My phone started blowing up. First, my mother left a series of tearful, manipulative voicemails, swinging from, "I don't understand why you're doing this to our family," to, "Your sister is going to be homeless, and it will be your fault." Then came my father. He was more direct. He left one short message. "Your mother is a wreck. I am disgusted by your selfishness. You have a duty to your sister. Call me when you decide to do the right thing." And then Amelia. Her texts were a masterclass in narcissistic rage. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're kicking me when I'm down. Some sister you are. I guess I'll just be homeless. Hope you and your perfect little family are happy." I didn't answer a single one. Mark held my hand that night and said, "You did the right thing. You are not their emergency fund. You are not her safety net. You have every right to protect the life you're building." His support was like medicine for a wound I didn't even know was that deep. We made a pact. We would stand firm together. We blocked my sister's number and let my parents' calls go straight to voicemail. For a week, the attacks kept coming. They even tried to get other relatives involved, sending in what some people call flying monkeys to do their dirty work. My aunt called, her voice full of fake concern. "Sarah, darling, I heard what's going on. Surely you don't mean to be so harsh. Amelia is just so fragile right now." "Aunt Carol," I said, my patience gone. "Amelia is 37 years old. Her fragility is a weapon she uses to get out of being an adult. I'm done being a casualty of it." The silence on her end told me everything. She mumbled something about pregnancy stress and hung up. The pressure was insane. That's the hardest part of breaking away from a toxic family. The whole system is built to keep everyone in their place. When one person steps out of their role, everyone else freaks out and tries to force them back in. I was the scapegoat who refused to take the blame and the fixer who refused to fix anything. My no created a problem they couldn't just pin on me or make me solve. They were panicking. The grand finale came a week later. My parents announced a family dinner. The invitation was a text from my dad that said, "We are all going to sit down and resolve this like a family. Be here on Saturday at 7. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. Mark and I debated it. Part of me just wanted to ignore it. But another part of me, the part that had been silent for 34 years, knew I had to go. I had to face them, not to make up, but to officially resign from the job they'd given me. "I'm going with you," Mark said, his jaw set. "They're not cornering you alone." So that Saturday, we walked straight into the lion's den. The air in my parents' apartment was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My mom's eyes were red, my dad looked like a thundercloud, and there on the sofa, like a queen holding court, was Amelia. She had this smug, victorious smirk on her face. She thought I'd been dragged there to surrender. She thought she'd won. She had no idea I wasn't there to wave a white flag. I was there to burn it all down. The dinner was a joke. My mom had made my favorite childhood meal, a cheap trick to get me to soften up. We ate in a suffocating silence. My dad kept clearing his throat, my mom kept dabbing her eyes, and Amelia kept shooting me triumphant looks over her wine glass. Finally, my dad slammed his fork down. "All right," he said, staring right at me. "This has gone on long enough. Sarah, we are extremely disappointed in you. You have a beautiful new home, a good husband, a baby on the way. You have everything. Your sister has nothing, and you won't even help her." I just looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a man who had completely failed as a parent, a man who found it easier to sacrifice one daughter for the other than to face the mess he'd made. "That's not true, Dad," I said calmly. "I have helped her my entire life." Amelia snorted. "Oh, please, when have you ever helped me?" That was it. That was my cue. I came prepared. I had kept the receipts on our family's crazy system for years. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notebook and a stack of papers. "I'm glad you asked, Amelia," I said, my voice perfectly steady. I opened the notebook. "Let's start with your freshman year of college. Remember that $5,000 I loaned you for tuition? The money you actually spent on spring break in Cancun. You never paid me back. I glanced at my parents. You told me to let it go for family peace. I turned a page. How about the time you were arrested for shoplifting? I was 22. I spent $2,000 on a lawyer to get the charges dropped so it wouldn't ruin your future. You never paid me back. Amelia's smirk vanished. Her face was going white. And let's not forget the 3 separate apartments you got evicted from before you turned 30, I went on, my voice getting stronger. I slid copies of bank statements and old emails across the table. Each time, I was the one who loaned you money for the next security deposit. That was over $6,000. Never paid back. My mother whimpered, "Sarah, please don't do this." "I'm just getting started, Mom," I said, my eyes locked on Amelia. "For the last 5 years since I started my career, you've all treated me like a bank. I wrote it all down. I have sent you," I looked right at my parents, "an average of $700 a month. You said it was to help with your bills, but your bills never changed. It was for her." I pointed at Amelia. "It was for her car, her clothes, her nights out. You used me to prop her up." I turned back to Amelia. "You have lived your entire life on a subsidy paid for by me. I have worked myself to the bone. I have sacrificed. I have put my own dreams on hold while you did nothing. And you have the nerve to sit there and call me selfish. You, who have never had a single day of real responsibility in your life." The room was dead silent except for my mother's quiet sobs. Amelia looked like she'd been slapped. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "So no," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "I will not be helping you. Not now, not ever again. The bank is closed. My home is not your crash pad. I am not your scapegoat. I am not your safety net. I am done." I stood up and Mark stood with me. "You wanted a family meeting," I said to my father. "Well, here it is. I quit. I'm resigning from the role you gave me in this family." That's when Amelia finally found her voice. It wasn't apologetic. It was a shriek of pure rage. "You've destroyed this family," she screamed, her face twisted and ugly. "You've always been jealous of me. You're a cold, heartless bitch." My mother joined in, her sobs turning into wails. "How could you do this to us, Sarah? How could you be so cruel?" My father just stared, his face a mask of shock and fury. He'd lost control. The whole system, built on my silence, was crumbling right in front of him. I looked at the 3 of them, a perfect, miserable picture of their own making, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, just relief. The fire I started was finally burning away all the lies. I watched their world implode and I turned my back and walked away. Mark's hand was steady in mine as we walked out the door, leaving the screams behind us. I didn't even look back. The silence in the car on the way home was a stark contrast to the storm we just left. It wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. It was the sound of a war finally being over. When we got home, I went into the room that would be our nursery and just stood there, breathing in the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. For the first time, I felt completely free. The days that followed were quiet. The calls and texts stopped. It was like I'd just vanished. To them, I had. The scapegoat had walked off stage, and they didn't know what to do without me. Sometimes, the only way to fix a broken family system is to leave it. People who leave are often blamed for the split, but they're usually just reacting to years of trauma nobody else would acknowledge. About a month later, I heard through the grapevine, Aunt Carol, of course, what happened. Just as we all knew she would, Amelia got evicted. She showed up on our parents' doorstep with all of her stuff. Without me as their financial cushion, my parents had to take her in. Their small apartment became cramped and chaotic. The golden child, who never had to follow a rule or lift a finger, was now living under their roof 24/7. They were finally getting the unfiltered, front row seat to the person they created. According to my aunt, it was a total disaster. They fought constantly. Amelia refused to clean or look for a job and complained about everything. For the first time ever, my parents were forced to deal with her themselves, with no one to absorb the fallout. The money problems got bad fast. They reached out one last time. My father left a voicemail. He sounded different. The anger was gone, replaced by this tired, desperate voice. "Sarah, we could really use your help. Things are difficult right now." I deleted the message. My empathy for them was gone, burned up in that final confrontation. Estrangement doesn't have to be about hate. Sometimes it's just an act of self-preservation. It's the gift of peace you give yourself when you realize you love yourself more than you love their dysfunction. My son was born 2 months later. He is the absolute light of my life. Holding him, I made a silent promise that his world would be different. He would never know a love that came with conditions. He would never be forced into a role to make me feel better. He would just be loved, exactly for who he is. It's been over a year now. I have no contact with my parents or sister. Sometimes I feel a pang of sadness, not for the family I lost, but for the one I wish I'd had. But the feeling passes and I'm left with this overwhelming sense of peace. My life is calm. My home is my sanctuary. I'm no longer waiting for an apology that will never come. Research is clear that the effects of parental favoritism are brutal on everyone, even the golden child, who often struggles with failure and relationships as an adult. But the scapegoat, ironically, sometimes has a better shot at healing, precisely because they were forced to build an identity outside of their parents' approval. By breaking away, they can finally build a life of their own. I don't know what happened to them, and I don't want to know. I chose to save myself. In doing so, maybe I did destroy the family as they knew it. But what I really destroyed was a toxic, abusive system. And from those ashes, I built a new life, one based on respect, real love, and the quiet, solid knowledge of my own worth. So I'll ask the question that started all this. Am I the asshole for exposing the golden child and watching the family burn? Or was I just the one who finally decided to stop handing the matches? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I've learned that sharing these stories is one of the best ways to heal and to see that you're not alone. So many of us have lived in the shadow of a golden child. If this story hit home for you, and you want to hear more about navigating tough family dynamics and finding your own strength, please subscribe. Thanks for listening.